The show is brought to you by our generous patrons at patreon.com/Fallout Lorecast.
Robots Radio presents the Fallout Lorecast.
Welcome to the Fallout Lorecast, a place for the Fallout community to come together to explore the boundaries of our knowledge about the world of Fallout. Wastelanders, Vault Dwellers, welcome back to the Fallout Lorecast. I have with me today a very important person, somebody who's going to help crack the code on what we have deemed to be a very particularly interesting question. With me today is Dave Chaffins, my good buddy from the Starfield Lorecast and many other projects like the Fallout Hub. Dave, welcome back to the show.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Tom. I'm looking forward to cracking the code. I have my stethoscope and my safe cracking gloves ready. My lock picking tools are available. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure that I could come up with a screwdriver to use, if we're talking about cracking codes, picking locks.
I've seen you make them just on a moment's notice.
Yeah, I have that ability. I have the ability to summon forth lock picking tools at whenever I deem it necessary. And bobby pins don't weigh very much, so I just keep this around. Yeah,
basically out of your butt. So yeah, I'm glad that you've come prepared. So those of you who have tuned into the show before know Mr. Dave Chaffins of the internet, and my good buddy Dave and I were chatting the other day over Discord, and we came about sorry about the dogs barking. This is what happens when we record during the day, but we were discussing the conversational topic, as you do when you discuss things of Fallout's nature, and it came up, the question, a what if question. And so I know we covered a bunch of what if questions back in December, but the question just happened to come up: what if the bombs never fell?
I looked over your library of what if questions, and when you pitched me that you were going to do some what if stuff, I was thinking to myself, okay, it'd be interesting if, we originally did an episode of what if the vaults weren't actually bad? Like, what if there wasn't actually experiments?
Yeah.
After that episode, I thought to myself, okay, but what if the bombs never fall? Like, what if the bombs never fall, do we just call it out instead of fall out,
just fall. No, there's no fall anymore. So,
no, it's just out.
They're just out.
We're gonna place them out.
I mean, it is the seminal event in the history of the games, right? Like, if the wasteland never gets wasted, then it's just the land, right? Like, is there a story to tell? And so, okay, so let's take us back to what makes Fallout different from the real world. It isn't just the fact that the bombs fall. The history diverges before that. So I think we both are aware of the history of things, and I've discussed this many times on the podcast. That's not the thing that makes these games and this world different from our own world. So the history of things is already different by 2077. 2076, 2077, the time frame, the world is at war. There's a conflict. There's an international conflict. There is a resource crisis. There's a virus raging across the human population. The development of the FEV is already a thing. There's syntax error in chat says there's already no transistor technology, so the miniaturization of technology isn't a thing. So here, let's frame this. Okay, so the United States and China is already at war. They've been in conflict in Anchorage already. The United States has subsumed Canada and Mexico. So that's happened. On the European front, Europe has basically kind of formed around the European group, which is now basically one super group of European nations. China is its own world power. China has attacked Anchorage. The United States has repositioned military forces in China. And here we are. The powder keg is ready to get lit. And whoever it is that drops that first bomb, whether you believe it to be China or the US or Vault-Tec or aliens or whatever, it never happens. That first explosive never gets sent into the air. Nobody sends that first sign, or somebody stops it. And that never happens. Where do we go from there? What happens next? So I know you have some theories on this. So let's go into your first thoughts here. Like, what do you think is the next step in all of this?
Yeah, it's interesting to a lot of the factions that we see in the games are continuations and kind of build off of these already existing factions within the world. I mean, if we even go and look at the Institute, if we go and look at Brotherhood of Steel, the Enclave, Vault-Tec, like as you go down the line, all of these factions were active before the bombs fell. And I think it's interesting to look through these different groups and figure out, okay, they were like, this group has formed. And the bombs
evolutions
changed.
Of things that already existed. The Enclave, like the U.S. government becomes the Enclave. The CIT becomes the Institute.
Right.
The U.S. military, in some form, becomes the Brotherhood of Steel. Like that's what you're saying, right? Right.
My first question is, is there still a Cold War? Like, what kind of, I mean, we're not political scientists here. We're not, armchair analysts of fictional politics within the world and Cold War analysts, but there is still a war going on between China and the United States within the Fallout games. So the bombs never drop. That doesn't change that fact.
Right. And by this point, it's not really cold anymore. Like, it is heated up. There is armed conflict on both fronts. Like,
yes,
the U.S. and China have now, in some way or another, sent forces onto each other's soil. So now, does that cool off in some way, and does it cool back down and turn back into a Cold War? Potentially. Or does it keep escalating? That could be a thing too, without going nuclear. It's when you look at history and superpowers, the idea is very based in the 1900s of what was the superpower of the United States and Russia during that time and how they affected things, how they influenced other countries and exerted their control over situations. There was no winner, I guess, there was no like big decisive battle that ended the Cold War. It just ended in general. But there were heated moments with the Korean War, with the war in Vietnam, that were influenced by the political setting of the United States and Russia. So my thought is, if you're having this giant war with China, I think that war actually continues on. It's in the DNA of Fallout that war never changes. And in this case, it really doesn't. Right. Does it become like a spot thing? Does it become like minor conflicts in specific locations based on the resources or the value of those locations? So, for example, Anchorage being a location that's primed with oil becomes a point of conflict, or a specific location in China that might be a prime location for intelligence becomes a point of conflict, rather than like, let's amass, millions of soldiers and just have a, World War I style, just a bunch of trenches and stuff. Do you think maybe we end up with just kind of these spot locations of like groups just kind of going in back and forth?
I think you're going to have proxy wars where you're going to have wars in other countries over resources that China and the United States would have investments in, that would have a side that they favor and want to win because of deals that they made. It mirrors a lot of the war in the Middle East, of the war on terror, a lot of these like modern issues. I think that that's the back end of that. As we come out of it, we have, of course, like the Korean War, war in Vietnam, but then the issues get more granular as you go along when you're talking about resource wars or territories or control. I think that things start to cool down. I think an Anchorage war was pretty heavy. I mean, that's like home turf for America at that point. That's like us going and marching in China and fighting in China. Like when you have that level of war, things typically tend to butterfly effect, but also scale down as years progress. So I don't think that the war continues in the regard of I invade you, you invade me, but probably we both have our interests. We're both moving them throughout the world and having these proxy wars.
So these are kind of like warning shots.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is like hey, this is what we're capable of. Don't push it any further. And then we respond, and then things kind of cool off. And then it turns into more proxy wars in other locations. But like, okay, we can fight in some other place, but just don't hit our soil again. That kind of thing.
Right.
Okay. So what about the other groups? What about, groups like Vault-Tec or like, well, let's talk about Vault-Tec. They've created all these vaults, and yet there's no need for them because the bombs don't fall. What does Vault-Tec end up doing? Because, they created a bunch of bunkers. They also invented a lot of technology. They've got this deal with the United States government. Do you think they keep on pushing the Vault agenda?
I don't think that Vault-Tec goes away, actually. I think that it was never, like, from the public perception, it was never meant to be a very serious thing. That's why people really didn't take clearly in Fallout 4. When the Vault-Tec representative comes, you're like, all right, dude, whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. All right.
whatever you want.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter to me.
And you served in the military. You're somebody who was close to the conflict, and you're still like, yeah, whatever. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Right. I think that it would then morph probably into kind of a pyramid scheme, where people would be like, oh, I own my bed in this vault, and that's very luxurious, and almost like attaching the value to it.
I own an NFT of my bed in a vault.
That's great. Yeah. It's like, I own this imaginary land that is in a vault in this mountain. That's where I'm investing my money into.
I own a square foot inside a vault that I can stand in just in a worst case scenario next to every other person.
Mm-hmm. You can come into I have other beds that I have bought, but I can sell them to you so that you can be a part of my community that I'm having in the vault that I bought space in.
Yeah. Right.
But then, since the bombs would never fall, those were never, like, they would have been depreciated by then, and they would never been used. So like it would still be around, I would say, but
like the Beanie Babies. This is like the Beanie Baby trend. Yeah. Yes.
And so they would just be it would be like a moment in time where Vault-Tec was a big thing, because they did all that like promotion and marketing around like the Tricentennial 2076, the Vault 76. They did the big unveiling of all of these different areas. And so I think then they're trying to get people to buy into that idea that they need vaults. So I think that you're going to see a lot of propaganda that's saying, hey, they could bomb us at any time. Like, this could happen at any time. You may not be aware, but it could happen, and we're selling the property for that.
Right. Okay. So let's take this in another direction. I want to save the discussion about the Brotherhood of Steel to the second half of the show, because I think that's really, really interesting. But I also think that there's a lot here to chew on when it comes to Vault-Tec, the connection to the government, and then the enclave, like the highest echelons of the people pulling the strings. Because if the bombs haven't dropped and the highest people up top have decided not to do that, to not use that as a way to manipulate people into vaults or whatever, do the executives at Vault-Tec go another route, or do they start really pushing the government to like push the population towards this idea? Or do they do they go another like, do they come up with some other alternate plan? Do they, I mean, there's the science angle too, right? Do they start petitioning the government to focus on the studies and running the studies in the vaults without necessarily getting people to go into the vaults because of the need of bombs, but starting to go, like, hey, let's start finding volunteers. Let's just move people into the vaults for the scientific purposes. And then if the bombs drop, we can just use them for what their original purpose was. But why don't we just start testing on people? And we don't even have to tell the population we're doing it. Why don't we just like start doing it secretively, kind of like what they were doing at Mariposa, because they were already doing that before the war happened, before the bombs dropped.
I think it's in their capability to do that. And it gives me a thought of, would it not be in Vault Tech's realm of experimentation to tell people and give out the alert that the bombs are falling and you need to get into the vault when they're not actually happening, so they could get a whole town of people in there against, with false information that the bombs are indeed falling, and then start doing some experiments. That seems like it's up their alley.
Right. Like a false alarm out in the middle of nowhere, like, Saskatchewan or something, like somewhere in a little village in the middle of nowhere where like 90% of the population has signed up for the vault, where nobody's going to miss anybody. And, there's a population of like 300 people. And it's like, well, we got that whole town in the vault, so let's just go ahead and start running some experiments on them. Nobody's going to know. Yeah, I could totally see that. I could totally see that being a thing. So what do you think about the Enclave then? Do you think, I mean, we already know that there was kind of a who's who pulling the strings on the upper side of the government, right? The highest levels in the government, the Mr. Houses, the smartest of the scientists, the highest level CEOs, like everybody and anybody who were kind of the connected who's in the world were on some level already talking about the potential for the end of the world. And they were making plans. And a lot of those people had connections with Vault Tech, with secret vaults, with plans for what would happen if things went down. And a lot of those people ended up becoming the Enclave later on. Do you think those people are still going to be influencing things on the top end of the government? Do you think that the government continues, the American government specifically, continues to become more and more corrupt over time and influenced by those people?
I think that the Enclave would play off of the fear, like almost kind of living in this constant threat of nuclear annihilation, because that's what it was. Like, that's why they built the vaults in the first place, and then it was followed through on. But in a scenario where the vaults didn't fall, I think that they would be able to exert more influence and power over people with the constant fear that a nuclear war would break out at any point. Mm-hmm. So I think that they would still be in control of that narrative, but I don't know if that doesn't happen, and let's say that they had no plans of that to happen, I don't know if they would follow through with that given the choice. They obviously did. Yeah. Maybe they shot first. I don't know who shot first, Han or Greedo, but
right.
In the game, it happened. Outside of it, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's better for this kind of evil oligarchy of.
Well, it's the fascist playbook. I mean, this is the recipe of the fascist playbook: is constantly vie for power, come up with a boogeyman that you can motivate everybody to be fearful from, convince everybody that you are the only ones who have the solution to stopping the boogeyman, right? Convince everybody that anybody who dissents from you, the other political side of the aisle, whoever that is, are, completely incapable and against stopping the boogeyman, or are on their side or whatever. Oh, they're pro China or whatever. Right. Like, and just completely pulling the wool over anybody's heads. And then if anybody within your side, if, anybody on your side of the political aisle dissents from you, is to then, sabotage them by calling them, out and saying like, oh, they're against this or whatever.
Right.
Like this is the recipe for fascism. This whole thing works really well in this scenario because the enclave, the who's who are now in kind of a intellectual or rhetorical arms race for power amongst themselves. And now in a situation like this, every situation like this historically eventually implodes because there's no actual solution. It's just an arms race to the top, and then the whole system falls apart. So how long does that last? That becomes the question, is like, does that go on for 50 years and then eventually the government collapses in on itself?
I think it's almost like a post-apocalypse, like where, or maybe a pre-apocalypse state where you have such big institutions and everything is corrupt. And so like it is just like empty to its core and rotting. Essentially you have like a rotting, like a social system at this point. Right. And the bombs kind of wipe it clean. And so continuing that on, it has to change somehow. There has to be a change eventually. They can continue it for however many years, but eventually there's going to be an end to that intellectual war that you were talking about.
Right. Well, and we do know that before the bombs dropped, that the costs of everything were skyrocketing. The average income versus the cost of living was extremely imbalanced. Like all of these things in the system were falling apart. So do we see revolution in this scenario? Do the bombs never drop? But what we see in the U.S. system is eventually the people rebel. Does the system fall apart from the inside? And so we end up with a wasteland that is created not from nuclear apocalypse, but from internal revolution.
I think in the second part of the episode, I think we'll talk some about the Brotherhood of Steel. But from this perspective, you already have socialist uprisings across America. That's one of the big things Fallout 76 points out.
Right. Do those become bigger? Do they gain more steam? Let's say you go 20, 30, 50 years into the future.
And it also begs the question back to it of, did the Enclave decide that they were done for soon and decide to drop those bombs? Like, is that when you think about the scenario where they didn't drop, you kind of like, once you put enough thought into it, you're like, okay, well, the Enclave can't last. Like, they can't be a thing. They can't continue down this path because they're going to be eventually voted out or just killed.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it just goes back to that concept of, a fascist system implodes eventually, and anybody who's smart enough, like a fascist system, and I'm gonna get reviews from people who are like, oh, you're talking too much about the real world stuff. This was like thinly veiled. And believe me, this is not a thinly veiled conversation where I'm trying to point out things. This is just the way these things work. And if you've studied history, this is the way these things work, because this is the way these things work. There's no other way that this stuff ever plays out. We've seen multiple examples of this throughout history, and this is just the way this stuff is.
This is what happened to the USSR. Was there was an oligarchy in control. It no longer was a communist country. It was a oligarchy that was veiled as communism, and it corrupted itself into a new country. Right.
Corruptive systems eventually implode, and then there's some sort of revolution that comes up from the ground up. Now, what that turns into ultimately is decided by the culture and the people who come to power afterwards. It's not always a good result. Like, all of that stuff is up in the air, but a corrupt system will implode from the inside. Oftentimes, it's hard to tell which direction that's going to go, but that's just the nature of these systems. But like in this kind of scenario in the United States, who knows? Like these social groups that we're forming could take it in any direction. Like if those social groups are corrupt in and of themselves, then we might end up with just as bad of a system replacing the system that was there, right? If they're misinformed, then they could replace the system with something that's equally misinformed. If they are well informed and they bring about a new democratic system, then maybe we have something rising from the ashes. I mean, that's one of the brilliant points of our, the forefathers of our American system, is that they were educated enough to build a new system that has stood for a few hundred years and has been a model for many other systems around the world. But that's not always the case, So it's a grab bag, and it has to do with how well educated you are. And the irony of ignorance is that people who are more ignorant think they're more educated. But, so you never know.
And I mean, when you think about another country like France or something, I mean, you think about how many revolutions they had, and it took them a long time to get what, the super developed and wonderful country that they are today. But I mean, really those 1800s era, I mean, they were popping off left and right. I mean,
oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it could have gone in either direction. And at one point they had, the whole Napoleon era, and they became a conquering empire, like you never know. So I think that's a good point that we could pause and go thank our patrons before we move on to the Brotherhood of Steel, because the Brotherhood of Steel system moving in the wrong direction could turn into a Napoleonic empire if taken in the wrong direction. So why don't we pause? We'll talk to our patrons and we'll be right back. It's time for that spring reset. I'm taking a look at everything in my closet and figuring out that, oh no, this absolutely needs to go. And it's about time I replace things so that my clothes aren't older than my 15-year-old. Now you might think that they lasted that long because they were well made, but no, they're in terrible condition. Unlike the new jeans I just got from Quince. Jeans have always been my personal go-to because you can kind of wear them for lots of different things, but maybe they're not your thing. Maybe you're looking for, 100% European linen with insanely soft flow knit activewear fabric. It's definitely getting warmer, and their flow knit activewear is moisture wicking, anti-odor, and soft enough that you'll actually want to wear it every day. So pick out what you want. You can't go wrong because they have prices 50 to 60% less than similar brands. And like I said before, they are high quality. I continue to wear their clothes all the time, and I know that these new jeans are going to last me a lot better than the other things in my wardrobe. And on top of it, they look great. They're so comfortable. And I spent just as much on the jeans that I am now cleaning out of my wardrobe. So if you're looking for something better, just all around better, go check out Quince. So go do it right now. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/falloutlore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. Go to quince.com/falloutlore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/falloutlore.
Hello there, old chap. Good to see another of General Atomic's finest, still eager to serve.
All right, so here we are in the middle of the show. I hope you guys are enjoying this conversation because it's going all sorts of different directions. But here we are to thank our new patrons. Holy moly, we've got 4 new patrons this last month. Stephen P, Nova D, Nick C, and Stuttering GM. Thank you for signing up. You guys are amazing. Man, I didn't expect 4 new patrons right at the beginning of the month. And that means we're up to 50 patrons. Thank you to every one of you guys. And if we've done anything to help you get through your work day, your work week, your workout, your drive to work, I probably repeated something in there, and or taking your dog to the vet to remove stitches because your dog had little bumps and you don't want your dog to have cancer. But I got the results from the test of those little bumps that they sent out to the doctor to check out the little, put it under the microscope and take a look at the little cells. Yeah. And that doctor said that they've never seen cells come back that were so good. Like they looked so good. Like, they definitely looked weird when they got them cut out, but they were like super clean and like fine. So
some would say it is a perfect cell. That's a Dragon Ball Z reference that is not for this audience, but it's there. It's out there for people to grab.
I am perfect. Can't do a Cell voice.
I don't know.
But it's been a long time since I've watched that show. But yeah, so she's doing great. She doesn't have to wear a little cone head anymore. But anyway, back to Patreon. If you'd like to help support the show, go check out patreon.com/ what is the name of the show? Fallout Lorecast.
Fallout Lorecast.
I do too many shows. And there are all sorts of different tiers. You can get ad-free episodes. You can join us on future episodes of the show. You can get t-shirts, special t-shirts made just for patrons. You can get stickers. There's all sorts of fun stuff on there. So go check it out. And thanks to you guys, I can do this as a full-time thing, as part of what I can do as a career. And I absolutely love you for it, because you guys have changed my life. So thank you so much, and go check that out. Also, we've got 2 new reviews to read out real quick. We have, oh man, these are international, one from Great Britain and one from Australia. This one is from Bell SR2 in Great Britain, who wrote, "So glad I found this. 5 stars. Stumbled on this podcast after seeing an ad on, oh wait, no, that's Mass Effect. What am I doing? I'm reading the wrong ones. Do we have new ones?
I don't know what...
I clearly prepped this show really well.
What if Tom forgot the name of the show?
What if I just did the Mass Effect Lorecast instead of the Fallout Lorecast right now?
That's a great April Fool's Day situation that you could totally do. Actually,
we don't have any new ratings, or we have no new reviews. So if you do listen on Apple Podcasts, or you have an Apple account and want to leave us a rating or review, and you give us 5 stars and some words, we'll read it out on a future episode of the show, and those help a ton. And if you're one of our 50% of our listeners who actually listen on Spotify, which is most of you guys probably, so it's more than 50%, then just take a moment, go to the part where you can scroll all the way up to the top, and you can see all the different episodes, and you'll see a little thing at the top left where you can choose the number of stars. And if you give us a 5-star rating, it helps a ton, because Spotify will rank things by rating now when you search stuff. So that would help an absolute ton. It just takes a second to do it, and you will have my eternal gratitude, because like a glowing one, I will live forever. That's not true, but I will be gracious about it. All right, let's move on with the rest of the show. And thanks to our patrons. Bye.
If you have any questions about Nuka World, I'd be delighted to answer them.
All right, so this is probably one of the most interesting things about this whole question about if the bombs were never dropped, if the bombs never fell, because when you and I were discussing this, the question about the Brotherhood came up. And of course, on first thought, there's okay, if the bombs don't fall, the Brotherhood of Steel doesn't happen. And then I was like, wait a minute. The Brotherhood, Maxon gets the idea for the Brotherhood when he discovers that they are doing testing on soldiers at Mariposa before the bombs drop. The impetus for forming the Brotherhood happens before the bombs drop.
Yes. And let's take it even a step further. You still have super mutants.
Yes.
Super mutants are still a thing.
Right. They're messing with soldiers before the bombs drop. So in a non-post-apocalyptic wasteland world, there would exist Maxon revolting against the military and totally messed up soldiers, messed up super soldiers that are basically super mutants. Now, does that mean the Master exists in some capacity from Fallout 1? Do we get a messed up super mutant who turns into the Master in some way? Do we get, maybe that one's kind of a stretch, but we get intelligent super mutants. Probably we get Maxon wanting to push back against the US government and forming a group to do so. Now, that doesn't necessarily become somebody who goes free ranging around the wasteland and collecting stuff. That probably goes more into the territory of vindictive ex-soldier sticking it to the government. So what does that become? What do you think, Dave?
I think you still have the Brotherhood of Steel. I think that the call out that Maxon made with the other folks that were under his command after the bomb, he kind of like
to take over the military, the Mariposa base.
Yes. He takes that over, and then he kind of like calls all of his old buddies, and it's like, hey, they're doing some really messed up things on these soldiers and making these crazy super soldiers. Mm-hmm. So those calls are still going out. So not only do you have a Brotherhood of Steel, you're having a Brotherhood of Steel that's way more connected, because he would know a lot more people, because nobody dies from bombs.
So do we have like a national, like, or at least like a Western or like insurrection in California? Do we have like a mass group that stands up against the government and the government tries to put down?
I think that you would see an occupation of probably the Mariposa base, because they would want to destroy or protect that space as a bargaining chip, but also destroy it eventually because it is an affront to the U.S. military and what they believe the U.S. military to be. So you're having essentially this resistance form from ex-military, an ex-military resistance. Meanwhile, a social uprising from the working class and unions. Meanwhile, the Enclave probably has control of these super mutants in some form or fashion. So you're still having a domestic dispute between the Brotherhood of Steel and super mutants if the bombs never fell. Mm-hmm. Like, now that has to be the case.
Now he's also made it semi-public. Like, this call out goes to other military bases and individuals. This isn't just like a private thing that happens in one location. Like, he puts an announcement out over the radio. So this isn't something that the government can just hush hush. This, right. It becomes something that if the bombs don't fall and destroy communication, and of course the lives of makes everything else kind of null, this becomes something that the nation will find out about. Which means that if the government comes in and clamps down on this with a heavy hammer and even kills Maxon, he could become a martyr, which means that you could have other people standing up across the country for the thing that he died for, mm-hmm. which could become even more powerful than what actually happens with the Brotherhood here.
Would you have... Now, here's the question. Would you have eventually, if the Brotherhood does their uprising, if they collaborate with the right people, would you have what I call the Steel States of America?
Maybe. Like, what if there was a civil war? What if you had enough groups, military groups, come together and say, we will not stand for this. This is not what the America that I signed up to fight for. And the people with them, the common, non-military members of those groups, the social groups who are now standing up against the government, the working class, everyone else, and they divide from the rest of the country, then very potentially you could have the Steel States of America breaking off. Like, what if the country is divided? Now, there's a whole other side to this. Mariposa is not the only place where the FEV is being tested. And we know this from Fallout 76. There are labs in Appalachia where the FEV is being tested. There are labs in the Commonwealth. There are labs in the Capital Wastes. There are other locations across the country where FEB has already been distributed and is being tested. So the super mutants are not only going to be pouring out of the Mariposa military base, there will be all sorts of abominations if this isn't handled correctly, coming out of different locations as well. And so now you potentially have the danger of those locations, if they're not handled correctly, leaking out in actual, like, regular urban environments, not wasteland urban environments, in all sorts of other regular places. So you could be like going shopping on a Saturday And then all of a sudden there's like a snallygaster that comes around the corner because it just like broke out of containment.
I think that it goes to show that mutations and how powerful those are. When you take nuclear radiation out of it, it's still a scary thing. Like, it is still a threat. That goes back to the decaying world that would still kind of exist, where you have these like mutants running around. You have this uprising for the military, uprising from a lot of the labor unions, just in America itself. You have this resource war that's still going on. It is a system that cannot sustain itself. Mm-hmm. And if the bombs never drop, probably America is as we know it in Fallout is no longer a thing. They probably are the losers in the big war in the end. They kind of like how Russia or the USSR stopped existing. I think that would happen to America in this scenario.
Yeah, they kind of fall apart under their own weight. The other thing on top of all of this is that when there's enough socioeconomic stress, individuals start to deal with psychological dilemmas. So in this kind of scenario, you would have an increase of just people who are dealing with like psychotic episodes, like all sorts of terrible things. So what happens when, and these are the stories of Fallout already, are like people in the wasteland doing terrible things because they're just like freaking out because they're just, they can't handle it. But what if those same kinds of people are freaking out in a modern world and they're the people who are running the labs testing the FEV, and they decide, I'm just going to start abducting people and putting them in my basement and start testing on them. Like you're going to end up with those same kinds of stories that would happen in the wasteland, but in these urban environments. And now we end up with like even crazier scenarios. Or I'm just going to take the FEV and just put it in the water supply of, the city I live in with 1.5 million inhabitants.
When bigger things are happening, things tend to slip through the cracks. Mm-hmm. I think that is something that often happens when there is something that is world changing. I think that there are also things that we as a collective humanity miss. And I think that this is one of those things where you have 13 things probably happening at once. The day after, like the bombs don't fall, you're having these massive life-changing situations happening. There is more of a gray area, and so you would have those strange stories as well, right? That may crop up,
right? So, all right. So to kind of bring this around to some other later questions, kind of wrap up the episode. What about somebody like Mr. House?
I've given this some thought, and if we think about like modern billionaires and what that means and how they protect their assets, because that was Mr. House's whole goal, was to protect his Vegas, to protect his own life and the things that he's invested in, essentially. Mm-hmm. I think that you see his Securitron still be a thing. Mm-hmm. I think that you see almost, if there is an uprising, Mr. House is probably going to get in on it and establish Vegas as be like, hey, this is my town. Like, you don't come in here. I don't bother you. You don't bother me. You're all disorganized. I am way more organized than you are.
Yeah, I'm smarter than you. If he can lock it down in the wasteland with a bunch of rowdy gangs and raiders and stuff, then he could probably still lock it down in this scenario.
Right. Because he made his platinum chip before the bombs dropped. It just got lost or whatever right, whatever the fate of it was. But he was prepared to have these Securitrons come and be the workforce for him. And he would probably last for years and years and years and years because his scope is small and his technology would probably grow that allows him to stay alive because, technological advancements kind of stopped once the bombs fell. I think that you start to see a lot of private corporations take over as the emerging sciences. Right. Like his General Atomics or Poseidon Energy or that kind of stuff.
So you think his advancements would go faster?
His advancements would go faster.
Yeah.
He would probably be the one developing the kind of futuristic technology that we would expect from, even our own visions of what the future would be from like a Blade Runner or a Cyberpunk.
So while the U.S. government is dissolving, he might actually be building a city-state that actually survives and thrives out in Vegas. Mm-hmm. And, the U.S. government and the America Steel or whatever are fighting it out. And he's
Steel States,
the Steel States, and he's building out like a city-state out there that people are like now flocking to because he's got the technology, he's got the resources to actually make a thing that actually works. And he doesn't have to deal with democracy. He's just making decisions and making stuff happen. I could totally see that.
Right.
And let's take that idea of technology moves faster through a system like his, where he just has the resources and the know-how to make that stuff work. What about CIT? What about the Institute? What about synths? Do we get synths sooner? Because it took like 200 years ish in a wasteland situation to get synths up and running. Does that happen way faster in this kind of scenario?
I think it does. I think it happens way faster. I think that you are more likely to see a Westworld, a Nuka world, but it's Westworld.
Nuka Westworld.
That's my pitch for today. I think that's what you'd see. You would see the synthetics probably be made faster. How they could be used if we draw on some of the concepts we talked about. I mean, imagine a proxy war fought by synthetics. That's an interesting kind of thing. It's almost like a Star Wars situation where you have this like built army of robots or of synthetics where they have like their thinking and feeling as well. And there's the whole issue with all of that. What do they do? Who has control of them? What does that look like in that future? I think is all wild to think about.
Yeah. Why send in a bunch of soldiers in power armor when you could send in a bunch of synths? And they're probably cheaper to make and train than soldiers and power armor.
Right.
That makes sense. Or
would the Brotherhood of Steel allow synthetics?
Right.
Like, would that be something that they allow to continue in a world that doesn't destroy itself? Maybe not. Maybe they feel the same way about synths that they do about super mutants.
Or when you're trying to put down a bunch of, socialist rebels, why send in humans when you can send in a bunch of synths to take them all out? I could see the U.S. government or the Enclave or whoever getting down on that idea and working with CIT in order to develop that as fast as possible in order to try to maintain control for the U.S. government, which is continuing to implode. Man, this is dark. This is a dark future.
It's interesting because it's not like you would think that it would be less terrible, but it is even more terrible in some ways.
Yeah,
because of the universe that is Fallout. It was already terrible. Like the bombs are just the bombs almost helped. Right. They fixed a lot of these like issues that we're talking about. They did, there was of course a loss of life in these games, but it's interesting. It creates a world where all of the systems in it are doomed. Like they are past due. They are like rotten milk sitting out. Right. The system is rotten milk. That's my election phrase that I'm going to say when I, run for county clerk. I don't know.
Yeah. It's all just like rotten fruit. And the bombs just stripped away the outer coating is all they did. Yeah. But the whole thing is just rotten. Man, this has been a really cool episode. I'd be very interested to hear what you guys think about this, please,
Yeah.
shoot us some thoughts on the Robots Radio Discord on the Fallout Lorecast channel, and tell us your thoughts. Or, of course, you can send me a note on the Twitter, robots_radio on Twitter. Dave, I know you've got a really cool project that you've been working on. You've got a new show.
Tell me about it. I've been doing a show called Rad Rolls. It's a TTRPG podcast where we play the official Fallout role-playing game.
That sounds awesome.
It is a lot of fun. It is in an original setting. I've taken New Orleans and kind of put it in the Fallout world. We did a Fallout Hub recently where we talked about what's the setting that we would want to see a Fallout game in. And it was New Orleans, I think, was the winner of that. And I thought, well, why don't we just try to do this with a tabletop RPG? And I decided I wanted to play a game of it. And then I decided, well, why don't we just like put it out as a podcast and people can enjoy along the way. So the first 3, maybe 4 episodes of that are out. We're doing weekly episodes. They come out on Friday. They're about 50 minutes long. We have party members from all over the Fallout canon. We got a guy that's from the Capital Wasteland. We've got somebody that's from the NCR. We have a guy that's local to New Orleans. We have a Vault Dweller coming into the episode. The Vault Dweller is hilarious because normally we see the Vault Dwellers from the player perspective, but this Vault Dweller is from a vault where everything that the vault was trying to test on was trying to make a better American. And so they have given them a bunch of false American history. And they are just obsessed with being the best American they can be.
Like Abraham Washington.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
So there's some interesting tidbits from a lot of the different cast members that we have playing characters. It's a really, really interesting take on it, and kind of takes Fallout and turns things like, what are cars like in Fallout? Like, obviously they explode when you shoot them, but what does a car look like in this scenario and setting? It's been really fun, and you can get it on all the different podcast services. It's Rad Rolls. It'll say Fallout Tabletop Role Playing.
Nice.
And it's every Friday we put an episode out.
Awesome. Yeah, go check that out. Syntax in chat says, is it the one from Modifius, or is it a different role-playing system?
It is the one we're playing, Modifius. It's the 2D20 system that they run. It's the official one. I've got the book right here. This is a great podcast content as I hold it up.
It's the blue one. It's the blue one with the big Fallout logo on the cover.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
What's up?
Yeah, go check that out. And you and I have another Starfield Lorecast episode that we will be doing on Friday. We're trying to do a few of those every month as we get closer and closer to some more official information coming out later this year. I think E3 is when everyone's expecting us to start really getting some real info out. And then that podcast will become much more of a regular thing. We're just kind of doing some episodes here and there as we get closer and closer. And we will be talking about some of the locations, some of the cities and things that we have gotten a little bit of a glimpse of, some little bits of information, plus some secrets that have been dug up and figured out by the community about Starfield. There's people have been digging even deeper into the little bits of information that we've seen in the trailers and stuff. Some really cool stuff. So tune into that.
A little snack on the bits.
Little snack. There's definitely some cool little things people have figured out so far. So I want to get you guys as much as we can, as much as we know, as soon as we know it. So tune into that. It'll be on Friday. It'll be live, of course, on the Robots Radio channels on YouTube and Twitter, and not Twitter. It'll be on Twitter. I stream on Twitter and Twitch, and there's too many TW names. And you can, of course, get that on whatever you're listening to this show on. Just search the Starfield Lorecast. And, of course, I stream every night of the week. In fact, tonight I'll be playing Skyrim with my mom. We're recording this on Tuesday. That's on Tuesdays. And Wednesday nights, I am now role-playing New Vegas with the community. And that goes up on this feed in between the regular episodes. It's kind of a bonus thing. And all sorts of other fun stuff. So come hang out with me on the live streams and all sorts of fun things. And of course, there's all the shows on robotsradio.net for all the different shows on the network. So that's what we got going on. Dave, thank you for joining me again. This has been super fun.
Well, thank you for having me, Tom.
And guys, until next time, stay safe out there. And if the bombs don't drop, then still figure out a way to stay safe in the not wasteland, because it's still going to be terrible. Ugh. All right. See you later. Bye, everybody. To plug into everything else we're doing, check out robotsradio.net. Also, look up the Robots Radio YouTube for videos about Fallout and other things. And check us out on Twitter, twitter.com/robotsradio.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.